everyone. This is Starry Ari's ASMR. I am Ari, and in this video I will be making a recipe from this cookbook here. This is the Taste of Home Instant Pot Cookbook. And the recipe I'm going to be making is this Italian sausage and kale soup. This is one of our favorite soup recipes, and it is so convenient to make because it is all just in the Instant Pot. You don't need any extra pots or pans, and it is really, really tasty and just a great soup for the winter. So that is the recipe that I am going to be making today. Here are the ingredients that I'm going to be using for this recipe. We first need carrots, and I usually just get baby carrots because they're pre-peeled, and if we have extras, they're just really easy to snack on, so it just makes it easier for us. And I have some kale over here. I'm not going to take it out of the bag because it's very crinkly. Garlic, a yellow onion, this ground Italian style pork sausage, a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, and 2 cans of these great northern beans. And we have oregano, salt, pepper, and this chicken stock, unsalted chicken stock. That is everything that I need for this recipe today. Let's go ahead and get started by prepping the veggies. Here is my kale, freshly washed. I'm going to take this paper towel and just dab it, just to kind of get some of that excess water off. It doesn't have to be perfectly dry. So the kale, I am just going to do a rough chop. So we first need to slice the hard stem off. And then I just do a bit of a rough chop on the leafy parts. I do not have great knife skills, and I'm certainly not the fastest when it comes to veggie prep, but it gets done, and I've never cut myself. And then I'm actually going to use these glass bowls to put the veggies in once I prep them. I'm very excited. This was my first time using these because we got these prep bowls as a Christmas gift. I typically like to get the prepared or pre-chopped kale from the grocery store, but they did not have any bags of it, so I figured I would just go ahead and chop my own rather than try and go to a different store that might have it. And it really doesn't take that long. I just usually am a fan of convenience, and if there is a convenient already prepped veggie at the grocery store, that just makes my life a little bit easier. I do really like kale, even though we don't really do too many meals with it. I think this is honestly probably one of the only meals that we actually use kale for. So maybe this year I will try and find some new meals to add to our list that we can do, because I do like it, and I think it's quite versatile in, soups and stews and things like that. So I'll have to kind of look at some other recipes I could do. I don't really like chopping kale, but I must say it is significantly better than chopping like broccoli or cauliflower, which I absolutely despise because all of the little florets kind of break apart and stick to your hands, and it's just terrible. So that's another veggie that, cauliflower and broccoli, if I can get it pre-prepared, I 100% will do that. And I might even go out of my way to try and get the pre-prepared stuff. so that I don't have to do it myself. Just chopping the kale in one direction and then grabbing the leaves and turning them to chop it in the other direction. Again, just a really rough chop. And the recipe calls for about 6 cups of chopped fresh kale. I didn't really quite measure this, but I'm calling that good. Here is my bowl of kale. Now I'm going to move on to the carrots, and I'm just going to kind of roughly slice these. The recipe calls for 4 large carrots, or about 3 cups, and it says to finely chop them. I prefer to have them just be a little bit bigger and thicker like this, so it's kind of just one of those things. I like to have kind of like chunks of carrot in my soup. Like I said, we honestly just get baby carrots most of the time because they are already peeled, and if we have extras after a meal, like if we didn't need to use all of them, then I'm much more likely to snack on carrots that are already peeled and cut up conveniently. Again, I think that I usually go for convenience with fruits and veggies. We're not really a big, snacky household. Well, my husband does like snack foods, but in general, we don't really get too many snack foods. So usually I try and go for convenience with veggies so that we are much more likely to cook and make meals if the ingredients are already kind of prepared for us in some way, and just make it a little bit easier for us. I think that the sounds of food prep can be really relaxing. Sometimes if I'm watching people and they're making me nervous with their knife skills, it's not as relaxing, so I apologize on that front. But I hope that you are at least enjoying the sounds. I'm going to gather these carrots and just put them in the glass prep bowl. I was very excited about getting these glass bowls for Christmas because we have so many different sizes, and that just makes it so nice for food prep like this. Just grab these last few. And here are the carrots all finished. And we had some extra left over that I will happily snack on. Now I'm going to cut up this onion. I'm going to peel the outer layer. And I actually did not know how to cut an onion when I left home because my mom is allergic to them. So we just never had them in the house. So I'm not the best at it, but I've certainly gotten better over the years. And usually I'm not a stickler for perfect veggies when I'm doing meals. I just kind of go with the flow, and if they're not all going to be the same size and shape, I'm okay with that. And now we can go ahead and chop this up. So I'm going to do one slice through the middle and then little slices along the lines. I also think that we need to desperately sharpen our knives, which I think it's quite unsafe to be cutting with dull knives because it doesn't cut as you might expect. I'm going to do the second half. do like how quick onions are to cut up. Now I'm going to gather this onion and put it in the bowl. Here's our onion. Now we're going to mince this garlic, and the recipe calls for 3 cloves of garlic. Slicing the ends off and then smushing each clove. And one of my cloves actually split into 2, so we technically have 4 cloves of garlic, but they're all different sizes, so it's okay. Onion had gotten me pretty good, so it was tearing up quite a bit. So those are all peeled, and then now we're going to mince these. I really love garlic, and because my mom was allergic to onion, I think that my family usually added a little extra garlic for most of our recipes, just to kind of like make up for that flavor a little bit. And usually I will just throw in a couple extra cloves than what the real recipe calls for, but sadly these were the last few that we had, and so I was just making do with these few. And I know you can also use like jar garlic, but I prefer to use fresh. Here are our veggies all prepped and ready to go. We've got the kale, carrots, onions, and garlic. So now we need to cook all of this in the Instant Pot. So here's my Instant Pot set up. I'm going to start the saute setting. And I need to cook this ground Italian sausage. We put that in the Instant Pot. And I'm going to cook this first, crumbling it until it is no longer pink. The recipe calls for hot Italian sausage. We usually just get the mild or the medium, depending on what we're feeling. The recipe also recommends if you want to make it a little bit healthier, you can use turkey sausage. I'm just separating the sausage with my spatula, pushing it around. I like to try and use our rubbery spatulas and utensils for any of our pots and pans, just to try and keep them in a little bit better condition and keep them free of scratches. But we have used metal before, so you can definitely see some of those scratches on the bottom. Typically, I would say that my husband and I usually make dinner together, and this is one of those meals where one of us would just be kind of standing here doing this, and the other one would be prepping the veggies. So it usually isn't a very long meal to make it all. There's usually not a whole lot of time dedicated to it, but that's, because there's usually 2 of us doing it. And this was a day where my husband was actually having to work a bit late, so I wanted to go ahead and get dinner started anyways, and figured it might be a good day to film it. Alright, here is our sausage all cooked, and the recipe does say that you can now drain it, but we had a pretty lean sausage, so there wasn't really a whole lot for me to drain, so I'm just going to leave it in the pan. And then the recipe now says add the next 10 ingredients. So we're going to start with the kale and the carrots, onion, try and get the last bits out of the bowl, garlic. I love this tiny little bowl for the garlic. I think that's so cute. Our 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, 2 cans of the Great Northern beans. These are rinsed and drained. And then our unsalted chicken stock. The recipe calls for 5 cups of chicken stock. This carton is just 4 cups, but we kind of are okay with that. It just makes it a little bit less brothy, but I don't want to get 2 cartons, and our grocery store doesn't sell cartons that are 5 cups, so we just make it work. We're going to do 1 teaspoon of this dried oregano. I do kind of a heaping teaspoon. We need 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/8 teaspoon of ground black pepper. I'm going to give this a good stir just to get everything incorporated and mixed all together. It is a little bit difficult when it is quite full, but I try my best. Trying to also kind of dig down to the bottom and make sure that the meat is mixed in with the veggies. So now that that's all mixed together, I'm going to put the lid on and lock it. I'm going to select the pressure setting, it's already on high, and I'm going to increase the time to 10 minutes. And while the soup is coming up to pressure and cooking, I'm now going to make a little bit of a cheap, quick garlic bread. And I originally had planned to use some of our leftover sourdough that we had from BLTs, but I did not make my husband aware of that plan, so he had actually used the last bits of sourdough for his lunches, which was okay. So we were just going to use this whole wheat bread instead. So I'm going to grab out 4 slices of bread and then butter each of the sides. I'm actually using this Blue Bonnet margarine spread. Because my husband's lactose intolerant, we usually just use something like this rather than actual butter, and I find that it typically works okay. So I'm gonna do that first side, flip it over onto the foil, and then butter the second side. We could also just buy like pre-made garlic bread from the store, but sometimes I prefer to do it just this way so we can use up bread if we already have it. And if we decide that we actually don't want garlic bread, then like that's perfectly fine and it doesn't go to waste because we just have that regular bread loaf for other things. So now that all of the slices of bread are buttered on both sides, I am going to sprinkle some garlic salt, and I'm just tapping a little bit into the lid here and then just going over each slice of bread with a bit of garlic salt. And then I'm going to do that same thing with this parsley. You can also add extra seasonings, but I usually just kind of keep it pretty simple with garlic salt and parsley. I didn't really do the best job spreading this out evenly, but that's okay. And here is my prepared garlic bread ready to go in the oven for a little bit. And here is that bread. After it's been toasting in the oven, I did flip it once, but I wasn't paying attention to times, so I can't really tell you. And now my soup is finished cooking, so I'm going to take the lid off. And then we can give this a good stir. Look at that. That looks so delicious. All of those good veggies and beans. I'm certainly a fan of Instant Pot recipes just because so many of them you can dump everything in and just kind of let it do its thing. Now I'm going to serve up a bowl of the soup. I get 1 big scoop of all of that good hearty stuff, and then I'm going to grab an extra scoop of just the broth. And then finally, the recipe recommends to top your serving with some Parmesan. So I have this freshly grated Parmesan in this tub that I'm going to use. I'm just going to shake a little bit of that onto my soup. And I like to dip my garlic bread in my soup and eat it that way. This is such a delicious, warm, hearty soup, and I just really, really love it. I love how colorful it is, and I like all of the veggies that are in here. And it gives us a lot of leftovers, so I usually have this for like lunch and dinner for the next few days. And I really like it, so I'm pretty okay with that. I hope that you enjoyed this video, hanging out with me as I made this delicious soup. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.